It's about the view. It's like, it's become like a medical hospital that displays human misfailure. Like, it's like here, let's look at this political oddity. It's like, it really is like the left-wing equivalent of a carnival sideshow, except instead of bearded ladies and fat clowns and two-headed cows. Well, let me rephrase that. But The View is a victim of the sunk cost fallacy. How can you now speak the truth when for years you've been telling lie after lie after lie? Now you're carrying this big bag of rocks around you because it's too harmful for their ego to admit that we really were dishonest.
Sunny Hostin just learned one of life's crueler TV truths. Never, under any circumstances, bring a butter knife to a Gutfeld roast. What began as just another day of righteous finger-wagging on The View quickly morphed into a psychological case study in emotional combustion under pressure. Tag-teamed by the lethal combo of Timpf's surgical deadpan and Greg Gutfeld's gleeful cruelty, Sunny's carefully curated persona was torn apart like a vegan at a Texas barbecue. And they didn't even have to be in the room. The takedown was so thorough, so elegantly brutal, it could be taught at the FBI Academy under non-lethal emotional assassination. What did they say? Why did it strike so deep? Why did Sunny look like she aged 10 years in 10 minutes on live TV? Grab your popcorn and pour a stiff drink, because this roast was so savage, even Joy Behar pretended not to know her co-host. Let's dig into the wreckage.
It's amazing how Joy and Whoopi became the smart ones.
For me, the most shocking thing about the conversation was how truly boring it was. They're like, well, the cicadas, they're cicadas. Okay, but it was like every 100 years. No, it's every 17 years. Do you know how many Emmys this show has? 31.
31 Emmys?
This show has 31. I mean, I'd hate to see the conversations that don't make headlines.
It started like any other week on The View. A table full of self-appointed sages locked in a perpetual feedback loop of moral validation. Sunny Hostin, perched atop her usual pedestal of legalese and indignation, was delivering another sermon disguised as commentary. The air was thick with passive aggression and polite applause, like a high school debate club that thinks it's running the United Nations. Everything was rolling along in that familiar, faux civil, tightly controlled chaos. Then the weather changed. A disturbance rolled in, not a storm, but a media event dressed like one. And before anyone could clutch their pearls, it was too late. The sarcasm surge hit landfall. Timpf and Greg Gutfeld launched a satirical blitzkrieg from hundreds of miles away, and Sunny was the primary casualty. You could almost hear the gears grinding as she tried to compute what was happening. Spoiler: she never quite figured it out.
Out of some news, the feral monsters of The View say they've never heard of you-know-who. True, the show that makes mornings hell claim that my name doesn't ring a bell. It's time for
our view on The View. Ugh.
Yeah, the witch's coven finally shows me some lovin'. Yesterday on The View, yours truly was the subject of conversation. Apparently the broads have no idea who I am, or so they say. Hit it, Gladys.
They said that Gutfeld talks about you all the time.
Who is he?
Really, who is he? I don't watch the show.
He has a show.
I don't watch the
never
show.
heard of him.
Yeah.
I guess he's just obsessed with me.
Next, Joy's going to say she's never heard of Car.
And this wasn't just any storm. This wasn't a drizzle of disagreement or a passing cloud of criticism. This was a Category 5 hurricane of mockery, a full-blown satire supercell whipped up in the late-night vortex of the Gutfeld zone. A world where the currency is sarcasm, the dress code is smugness, and the language is irony layered with spite. There was no debate, no split-screen shouting match, no forced cable news confrontation. That would have been merciful. No, Sunny Hostin got roasted from a distance, torched by a team that didn't even bother to look her in the eye. And maybe that's what stung most. She wasn't even worth a direct hit. This was comedy sniping at its most precise. Anonymous, stylish, and emotionally devastating. The Gutfeld crew didn't just throw punches. They dropped satirical napalm and watched the emotional fallout unfold in real time. Sunny never entered the ring, but somehow she left bruised.
Seriously, her denial of knowing me is as believable as her red hair. But obsession? I mean, come on, Joy. Where would you even get that idea? Like Joy Behar's face, it's looking worse and worse by the day. More full of crap than Joy Behar after a night of scotch and Taco Bell. Her being named Joy is like me being named Ugly. Joy wasn't there on the show. Apparently Mondays are her days off when she feeds in the pasture. It now smells like a humid day inside Joy Behar's moo-moo. And the motives stink worse than Joy Behar's jog bra. I mean, assuming she jogs. Oh, wait, there she is.
It was the comedy equivalent of a drone strike. Remote, relentless, and mercilessly accurate. Gutfeld and Timpf didn't just go after Sunny. They selected her from orbit, zeroed in with laser-guided mockery, and executed a roast so clinical it could have been live-streamed from an operating room. Cat Timpf, floating in like a snarky phantom, unleashed a barrage of sarcasm wrapped in that trademark deadpan calm. Her words weren't loud, but they stung. More scalpel than sledgehammer. Then Greg Gutfeld, ever the ringmaster of media chaos, turned the segment into a prime-time vivisection of The View's entire moral ecosystem. And Sunny, she wasn't just a target. She was the case study, the control group, the cautionary tale. By the time it was over, it wasn't just a roast. It was a full-blown academic presentation on how to dismantle daytime self-importance using only smirks and timing. The circus was in town, and Sunny was the reluctant lion doing tricks for an audience that had already seen through the act.
I want to hit myself in the face so I can feel something. You know, it's like so boring. He's like, yeah, I like Instacart, but don't worry, I tip the poors. But, you know, Joy, you actually don't like Instacart, and you do like the store. And then Joy is like, yeah, I do. I like to go to the store. I like to walk around and see what's at the store, what I do want, what I don't want. Maybe I want tuna fish, and I just want to hit myself.
Let's get something straight. Sunny Hostin didn't cry. There were no sobs, no tissues, no mascara streaks. But what unfolded was far more exquisite. An emotional unraveling in high definition. The kind of subtle meltdown where a person doesn't even realize they're spiraling until their words start tangling, their tone starts cracking, and their facial expressions become live-action emojis for "I'm fine," when they are, in fact, anything but. Sunny's usual rhythm, the polished cadence, the morally assertive tone, the courtroom dramatics, began to falter. Her confidence frayed like an old script rewritten too many times. It wasn't a public breakdown, it was a performance with a mask slowly slipping. The roast didn't just dent her image, it exposed the wiring underneath. And when someone's entire professional identity is built on the illusion of composure, watching them flinch from invisible punches is comedy gold.
Well, you pretty surprised that they didn't know what this show was?
No, I'm also not surprised that there's one part of the video from the show yesterday that you left out.
Oh, really?
Yeah, can we roll that, please?
I don't watch the show that much, but I've seen it.
Who is that? Who is that?
Greg Gutfeld's one of the hosts of The Five, who, if I don't have anything nice to say, I generally don't say anything at all. I would just say that the show should be called Cat Timpf, not Gutfeld, because she's the funny one on it.
Somebody's flirting with little cat over here.
Well, she's the Republican one at the table, but I just think as a libertarian, I'm always looking to find common ground with other people because nobody really shares my politics. So I find some common ground in The View where she thinks I'm funny and I agree.
What made this particular roast uniquely vicious wasn't the volume, it was the precision.
Cat Timpf didn't need to raise her voice or drop a mic.
All it took was a raised eyebrow, a well-timed smirk, and that classic bless your heart, southern venom disguised as sweetness. With a single sentence, she bent Sunny Hostin's entire media persona into a pretzel of self-serious absurdity. Meanwhile, Greg Gutfeld, smug as a cat who just knocked over the last family heirloom, steered the ship with his signature brand of gleeful nihilism. They didn't argue. They didn't explain. They laughed. And that's what made it so dangerous. It wasn't debate. It was demolition. A cultural drive-by conducted in punchlines and knowing glances. Sunny, miles away, tried to smile through it, like someone pretending not to notice the room is on fire. No tweets, no rebuttals, no Instagram wisdom quotes. Just silence. And the silence, that was the loudest sound of all.
The true sign of the apocalypse is someone that dumb has a law degree, Worse, if your name has the word sun in it, there's no excuse for not knowing how an eclipse works. But it's no surprise that Joy is the one who understands science. She's been on the science diet for years. They're turning on me. So that makes Sunny Hostin, who thinks climate change caused the solar eclipse, the dumbest of them all. Because everyone knows the moon caused the eclipse, which is controlled by the View's gravitational pull.
Sometimes you hear a quote so baffling, so cosmically stupid, it deserves to be carved in stone and launched into orbit as a warning beacon for alien civilizations. Enter Sunny Hostin, Harvard law graduate, TV host, and apparently part-time eclipse theorist. When she suggested that climate change might have played a role in a solar eclipse, you could feel the collective IQ of the nation gasp in horror. Joy Behar, who once confused the moon with a croissant, suddenly looked like Neil deGrasse Tyson.
And the cherry on top?
The joke practically wrote itself. Because if your name is Sunny, and you still don't understand how sunlight works, we're already in too deep. Gutfeld and crew didn't need to lift a finger. The comedy wrote itself, then set itself on fire just for warmth. No roast required. Sunny handed them the matches and begged for a spotlight.
4-year-old was mocked by The View over his name, prompting Musk's child to exclaim, "Daddy, I didn't know hippos could talk." Sausage maker Johnsonville is recalling more than 42,000 pounds of pork sausage for possible contamination with plastic fibers. Fortunately, authorities were able to track all 42,000 pounds to a single location in New York City.
It was subtle at first, so subtle you might have missed it if you blinked. But if you watched closely, you saw the shift. Sunny Hostin started checking her notes more. Her monologues grew longer. Her tone stretched tighter. What used to sound like polished, prosecutorial confidence began tipping into defensive overcompensation. She wasn't just talking anymore. She was auditioning for the credibility she thought had been stolen. That's the thing about roasts. The jokes may stop, but the implosion continues. The fallout has a half-life. On social media, her facial expressions got GIF'd into oblivion. TikTok turned her into a walking reaction meme. YouTube analysts broke down her tonal shift like the Zapruder film. And while her fans swore nothing had changed, everyone else knew better. Because when someone gets roasted so thoroughly they start fact-checking themselves mid-sentence. The comedy isn't over, it's just begun.
Ah, you look tantalizing. You know, I make fun of The View a lot, but that's only because they keep talking. Because COVID also taught Sunny Hostin how to get her groceries delivered.
3 years, that's when I discovered Instacart, and I give them a big tip because they don't always pay their people well, and it's so that's been an issue, I think, for the company. But man, you can get toiletries, you can get fire logs.
Fire logs? She had to tell the audience that she tips big because even she knows she sounds insufferable.
Timpf and Greg Gutfeld didn't just roast Sunny Hostin, they leveled the cathedral she'd been preaching from. They dismantled the architecture of moral superiority plank by plank, laughing the whole way down. And here's the kicker. It wasn't personal. Sunny wasn't dumb. She's smart, very smart, and that's what made the fall so dramatic. Because when intelligent people trip over their own self-importance, it's Shakespearean. She thought sincerity was her armor. But satire doesn't respect sincerity. It feeds on it, devours it. And the Gutfeld crew? They didn't even bother to gloat. They just moved on, probably already planning their next ambush of over-polished, hyper-serious media personalities. Meanwhile, Sunny was left pretending it never happened, sipping her coffee like the walls weren't still smoldering. It was the performance of denial we didn't know we needed. A sitcom playing in her head while the reality show was getting canceled in real time.
Their brains are small. But who's the dumbest one of all? True, none of them are in Mensa, but who's the most densa? Perhaps it's Sunny who mastered the art of making idiots look smart. Now The View could ask a mirror who's the dumbest one of all, but there's no way that glass doesn't...
There was no need for a rebuttal. That's how you know a roast landed. Gutfeld and Timpf didn't wait for responses, because the laughter was the response. The silence that followed? That was the echo of a direct hit. Sunny Hostin, ever the pro, soldiered on. She kept her tone steady, her back straight, her smile plastered. But you could see it, the microscopic cracks forming at the edge of the screen. Because nothing screams, "I'm fine," like someone trying this hard to look unbothered. Her fans launched hashtags, wrote think pieces, and insisted it was all just another attack on women of color. But the rest of us? We were just enjoying the fireworks. Because when someone builds their entire identity on authority and dignity, watching that foundation quiver under the weight of sarcasm is pure gold. It's not cruelty, it's gravity. And gravity always wins.
People have to wonder, where does Sunny Hostin get her opinions?
Yeah.
Like you said, it's obviously from her husband. She has to tell her what to say in The View, because without it, she's got nothing up there. She's not very bright. But the problem with her is that she went full racist. She injected skin color into a fairly generic behavior seen in all spouses, regardless of skin color. People marry, they listen to each other, they have something in common with them, they share their political views. She just didn't want to upset her husband by saying her husband makes her do everything, and then she'd have to accuse him of being a racist.
They never even said her name. That's what made it so artfully cruel. Timpf and Gutfeld stood center stage, held up a mirror, and waited. And Sunny Hostin ran across the room, pointed at the reflection and screamed, "How dare you!" That's not a response. It's a confession. Kat Timpf dropped a roast so generically specific, so elegantly vague, only the guilty would flinch. And flinch she did. She practically dove headfirst into the fire. You know you've lost the narrative when a tone, a vibe, a half-smile is enough to detonate your entire sense of composure. Greg Gutfeld didn't even try to escalate. He didn't have to. He just laughed. That kind of laugh that says, "We didn't aim at you, but thanks for volunteering as tribute." The irony? Sunny dragged herself. All they did was set the table. She brought the ego, the gas, and lit the match. You know you've lost when you start defending yourself against punches that were never thrown. Sunny Hostin essentially stormed out of a party she was never invited to, filed a complaint with HR, and then wondered why everyone was laughing. The beauty of this meltdown wasn't in the explosion. It was in the performance. Dramatic pauses, furrowed brows, that slow, purposeful cadence of someone trying very hard to appear unbothered while clearly unraveling. And the viewers? We were the lucky ones, watching this televised emotional opera unfold like Succession meets Bravo after a bottle of Chardonnay. It wasn't cruel. It wasn't even personal. It was just truth, delivered with a smile and wrapped in satire. Because when ego walks into the ring with comedy, it never walks out the same. And as Sunny continues delivering monologues like nothing happened, somewhere out there Kat Timpf is sipping a martini, Greg is sharpening his next punchline, and the audience? We've already replayed the clip 20 times. Not because we hate her, but because it was just that good.